It's got Berlin, it's the 1960s. It's a bit of a controversial pick in some quarters.
Because for some spy fans, it's a deal breaker. You know, George Segal being Quiller.
The Quiller Memorandum is more of a slow burn spy movie. If you're looking for a Goldfinger from Russia with Love type of movie, this is not it.
When I first watched this film, my first take on it was, I don't want to watch a spy film with George Segal. Who wants to do that?
We're not talking cult Spybrary popularity. It is a little bit of a B-side.
Do you love spy books, movies, and TV? Then the Spybrary podcast is for you.
Hello and welcome to episode 279 of the Spybrary podcast. Today we welcome the return of Section F, which is our section that reviews spy movies. We're doing a debriefing today of the Quiller Memorandum from 1966. Joining us is Michael Heary. Welcome, Michael.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Shane.
Fantastic. And author Andy Onyx. How are you, Andy?
I'm fine, Shane. I'm fine. Thank you.
Well, I'm excited because we're tucking into a Cold War movie. It's got Berlin. It's the 1960s. It's a bit of a controversial pick in some quarters. It is the Quiller Memorandum from 1966. I'll just give you a quick briefing to set this movie up. So, after two British Secret Intelligence Service agents are murdered at the hands of a cryptic neo-Nazi group known as Phoenix, the suave agent Quiller, George Segal, is sent to Berlin to investigate. There he begins an affair with Inga Santa Berger, a beautiful young teacher. However, their lives are put in danger after Quiller is kidnapped and taken to Phoenix's headquarters, where he meets October, Max von Sydow, the mysterious leader of the group. So I think it's fair to say, for anyone listening into this today, that the Quiller Memorandum is more of a slow burn spy movie. If you're looking for a Goldfinger from Russia with Love type of movie, this is not it. It is a slow burn spy movie. And there's a couple of elephants in the room that I think we should tackle first, because this is what always comes up. Michael, the first elephant in the room is the casting of George Segal as Quiller.
Yes.
It's
a massive
your
elephant.
take on that?
It's a massive pink American elephant. Yeah, I think, I suggested this one because I thought it would be sort of controversial, because for some spy fans, it's a deal breaker. You know, George Segal being Quiller. The Quiller books are beloved by a lot of folks, and I've read a few of them myself, and they're very well done. And George Segal is nothing like the guy in the books. I mean, apart from him being American and Quiller being British, he's still nothing like that character in the books. However, and that's when I first watched this film, my first take on it was, I don't want to watch a spy film with George Segal. Who wants to do that? Why can't they get someone else? And the second time I watched it, I went, oh, okay, there's a lot going on here that I didn't catch the first time. And I think this is a film that if you can get past the elephant in the room, is really rewarding.
Andy, going into this, how familiar were you, first of all, with George Segal as an actor, and then with the Quiller books?
Well, I'd seen him, and I'm not quite sure. Michael probably informed me on this. I'd seen him in the role of a romantic comedy lead in something or several movies. I'm not quite sure, but I was familiar with him. And the books you asked me about, well, I've read the grand total of one, which is Northlight, on the advice of the Spybrary Quiller specialists out there. So that's that. I've seen the film previously. I've watched it back to back recently as well for this. And as Michael says, there's a lot of things that pop out on the second watch. Whereas if you'd just gone to the cinema to see this, you may walk out of it and just think, oh, yeah, well, basic spy movie, as you say, slow burning spy movie. But if you can watch it immediately the second time, a lot of things that weren't really clear pop out, and like you say, it is a bit of a light bulb. The light bulb keeps coming on as you move through the film, and I don't know if that's probably an advantage today, what with on demand, and you can actually buy the media on disc or Blu-ray, but maybe originally a lot of things were lost on the audience with this. But as Michael says, the elephant is George, really, and it's an elephant with the most winning smile known to man, I'd say, isn't it? And you know, we can imagine the director just getting exasperated, saying, "Cut, you know, George, you're smiling again. Look at me, George. You got to stop smiling." You know what I mean?
Well,
You're supposed. Yeah,
that's an interesting observation, and one I want to tackle a bit later about the acting there. You mentioned the Spybrary community, and I did want to read out a comment from Jason King, who's a huge fan of the Quiller books, and he says, "This movie is interesting in so much as it formed part of a trilogy of serious spy movies released at the height of Bond mania. We had Ipcress and The Spy Coming from the Cold in 65, and then this one in 66, all adapted from successful novels. The source, originally titled The Berlin Memorandum, had been released to much critical acclaim in 65 and had won an Edgar Award for its author, Adam Hall. The movie, directed by Michael Anderson from a screenplay by Harold Pinter, was released just 1 year later. They did things fast back then. Although much beloved by Eurospy fanatics, principally for its screenplay, John Barry's score and cinematography, it was, unlike Ipcress and The Spy Coming from the Cold, a resounding box office belly flop. In my not-so-humble opinion, the main reason is the monumental miscasting of George Segal as Quiller. Don't hold back there, Jason. Quiller is British, whereas Segal clearly isn't. Segal is clearly not a man of action, whereas Quiller is. And to cap it all, the movie is about an intelligence officer going undercover to unearth a post-war neo-Nazi organization, and Seagal, who is so obviously Jewish. As well as being much hated by Quiller's creator Adam Hall, the movie's failure clearly strangled the hero's screen career at birth. My question to Section F is, how did this colossal miscasting of one of my favorite literary spies come about, and who should they have cast? I feel like so much of the strength of the Quiller novels I've now had the pleasure to read comes from the constant flow of Quiller's intense internal monologue. And for me, there's no way to effectively transfer that strength to film. It's been a couple of years since I've seen it, and I'd only read a single Quiller novel the last time I saw it, so I'm curious how they try to make up for the deficit in the adaptation. So he does raise the point there that I think is really important, because when I watched the movie the first time, I discovered it through Spybrary. So it was way back in 2017. Like, hands up, before Spybrary, right, I wasn't even aware of Quiller, which I know is sacrilege to many of our esteemed members. And, you know, I watched the movie and I enjoyed it because it's a bit like, you know, if there's a particular genre of music you really like or subgenre, you're instantly, you know, drawn to it, or maybe attributes of a female you like, high IQ or whatever it may be. And for me, this features Berlin, right? So I'm in. I mean, that gets 4 trench coats out of 5 because it's 1960s Berlin from the off. So I'm incredibly biased. But I hadn't read the books and I enjoyed the movie. And I think that's the important thing here is maybe those people who dislike this because of their love of the books, maybe you should leave that to one side and view it almost as this isn't the Quiller series. They could call him Smith or Jones or something else. Right. Would they enjoy the movie if it wasn't as this is, you know, one of his favorite spies? What do you think, Michael?
Well, I regard Jason King's post on Spybrary with great appreciation. And I understand that he feels this is a massive, massive miscasting thing. I don't know that that's why it was a box office failure. My guess it was a box office failure is because it takes some time to get into it. I mean, if you're expecting James Bond, or even To me, I think Ipcris is the perfect comparison because this came out a year after Ipcris. I do think that what they're doing a little bit with Quiller here, and some of the sort of anti-authority sort of vibes that you get with George Sanders' character, I think that's a better comparison. I think they probably cast George Segal because he was a hot young actor. 6 months before this, he was in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which he would eventually be nominated for an Oscar for. So I think he was known as a dramatic actor. And clearly they made the cynical choice to cast an American because they wanted the American box office. But I will make the bold statement that if you can get past, I don't know, his smiling, I can't really comment on him being Jewish or not. I don't think that really plays into this at all. I think George Segal does what the script asks of him. And I think it's a good performance. I think he's a solid actor. Would he be my first choice for Quiller? No. And if that question about who would you cast back then, I did give that some thought because I saw that post, and I would probably cast someone like, at first I thought about Terrence Stamp, but I think he's too cool. He's too cool. He's too good looking. So I would go with the young Edward Fox based on what I see from him in Day of the Jackal a few years down the road.
Yeah, that's a good choice. What about you, Andy? Any thoughts on?
Well, in terms of the casting, while we're on that, I think if we're looking at the Quiller from the books, from everything that I've heard and the one that I've read, special operative, very intense, like you said, the internal monologue, and he's an adept at karate. So I would go with that description. Maybe Stanley Baker, yeah. Probably Stanley Baker would bring a bit of menace to it. But if they were intent on using an American, I've got another smiler, but it's a different kind of smile, and that's James Coburn. Yeah, who could do the train with Bruce Lee, could do, he's got some basic martial arts skills. He can do a bit of action. He's got a smile, but it's more like a tiger's smile. It's like a smile, yeah, I'm going to kill you. It's not a charming smile, or not in that way. So on the casting front, I'd say that. But I disagree about you couldn't make a film with an internal monologue, because I can't quite bring up a film as an example right now to you both. But we've all seen those movies where there is no spoken dialogue and there's a voiceover. So that voiceover, maybe with a bit of echo or something like that, can be, if the screenplay is written in that way, that can be Quiller's internal monologue. I thought this, I thought that, the organism was saying, all that. So I don't think that is unfilmable or undoable. I just think that it's possible that that Harold Pinter didn't read the books, frankly. And I think that in terms of the success of the film, it is, as a complete package, it is, although I enjoyed the film, I like the film, I'm a fan of the film, it is below, as a complete package, the Ipcris file. So it's almost like a B-side to the Ipcris file, and they've got a lot of the same things. We've got John Barry again doing the score, but the score is not quite as catchy as the Ipcris file. It's got the flute, it's got the cymbalum, it's got the twangy guitar stroke harpsichord, but it's not quite there. And obviously, Mr. Seagal's not Palmer, but there's almost like a nod to Palmer, because you've got one of the heavies there with the big National Health glasses on, whether they're props or whether he needs them because of his eyesight, I don't know. But I think that is probably a big pointer to its lack of success at the box office, frankly. I think it's, in terms of street popularity, and we're not talking cult Spybrary popularity, it is a little bit of a B-side, though there's lots for us that we've enjoyed. Well, certainly, speaking for myself, not you two, that I've enjoyed in the movie,
I was thinking of, when you think of the movie with the internal monologue, I was thinking, did you see that as a recent movie? It's not a spy movie, The Killer, the Fassbender movie.
Yes.
That kind of had that Quiller vibe to me.
Yeah.
He's going about his business,
And he's
topping
thinking it.
people, and he's thinking,
Yeah.
and he's doing things like flicking up his soundtrack and
Exactly.
moment before the kill.
Exactly.
But
And if you'd have done that, that would have put a gulf between Ipcress and this, wouldn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah.
How do you think it?
If I was casting,
Michael.
I was going to say, if I was casting Quiller today, Michael Fassbender would be my choice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good movie, by the way, Michael, if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
Terrible music. Real crappy band in the background.
Yeah, that's right. Those guys from Manchester. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I tell you, here's an opinion. This is a recording, so bear with me, right? Although this movie is an anti-Bond, and we'll get into that shortly, I've enlisted Q Branch for Section F going forward to kind of help us with some clips. So hopefully you can all hear this clip now.
So about a year ago, Eric Idle gives a big party here at some restaurant. It was at the Sportsman's Lodge. And there's about 150, 200 people there. And I'm there, and Quentin Tarantino comes up to me, finds me and comes up to me, and tells me that of all the spy movies that came out in those years, in the 70s, the absolute best one was the Quiller Memorandum, bar none, in terms of structure, in terms of reveal, and then he, chapter and verse, went through that movie. So that was pretty high praise.
Wow, right? So, I mean, Quentin's a fan.
Yeah. Well, he loves his obscure B-sides.
He does.
Doesn't he?
I think B-side is a really good description, actually. And I also want to give kudos to Andy for giving a little Spybrary pop there with the coffee cup. That was a nice touch. But yeah, I think, look, Tarantino does like obscure things. There we are. Lovely. But I really do think that it's the script here that is so solid, and I think it's the script he might be responding to. Michael Anderson, as a director, is not necessarily known. He has no masterpieces after this. Logan's Run is probably his most well-known film, which came out, a sci-fi movie in the 70s with Michael York and Farrah Fawcett and Jenny Agutter, But I do think that this is a solid movie. And even though it takes place in the Cold War, dare I say it, the subject matter of this film is something that is relatable today. The Nazis, the neo-Nazis in this film do not wear swastikas. They don't have uniforms per se. I think the only sort of remnant from the past is they refer to Max von Sydow as Reichsfuhrer a couple of times. So I like that sort of subtle, or, the Nazis are hiding. They look like everybody else. I think
that's right.
I think this movie has got a lot going for it, but we've got that George Segal problem, And I compare it to Ipcress in that I think it's in the same vein. It's not nearly the film Ipcress is. I mean, Ipcress is so beautifully directed, and Michael Caine as Palmer, that's just a match made in heaven in terms of actor and role.
Did you find at the beginning, Michael and Shane, that when we're talking about casting, then we've got the man of 1,000 faces there, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Alec Guinness, as Paul, the sort of agent liaison man. And he was there, wasn't he? No brown shirts anymore. They look like everybody else, about these neo-Nazis. But the way that the film is shot, and again, not talking about Ipcress now, but talking about the one that came after, which is Funeral in Berlin, this shows us, or I found, or I noticed this time, how beautiful and modern and well lit Berlin is. It's showing us the new Berlin, the new post-war Berlin. Everything is cooking, everything is new. We see the Mercedes building, the new Europa Center is only built a year before. It's funny how they haven't even thought that the base might be within the Europa Center, hiding in plain sight. But as I say, as a sort of not a travelogue, but an advert for the new Germany. I thought it worked It worked really well. Even Quiller jumping in his lovely little red Porsche, you know. Yeah, I thought that side of it. There was nothing grim there, nothing dark, nothing to do with the other side of the wall. And I don't think the wall was even mentioned, was it here? You know?
Doesn't seem to be.
I'm glad you picked up on that, because I think that is the subtext of the movie, the old Germany and the new, and we certainly see that with. I don't know what we do with spoilers here, because this movie came out in the late '60s, but the twist at the end of the movie, you know, that's definitely the new Germany. And if you think about this movie coming out in '66, that was only 20 years after the end of the Second World War. And if you go on YouTube and you look at Berlin 1945, the whole place is piles of rubble. In a heck of a state. So you do see that, the German economic, or the West German economic miracle of West Berlin, with the new office blocks being built, the shopping centers, the cars, the clothes, is very, very bright. And I know I've spoken to quite a few people who crossed through the wall and would say that when you go from East Berlin into West Berlin, it's like going from a black and white movie into full color, glorious Technicolor. And you certainly see that in this movie.
Wizard of Oz style.
Correct. That's a good way of putting it. I haven't seen that spy movie, by the way. But but joking aside, the closest they get to the wall, because I'm a Berlin nerd, is actually where his hotel is. And that is, if anyone's been to Berlin, it's right opposite the other side of the river of the East Side Gallery, where there is still a section of the wall. So it does start to get a little grubbier there, because, nobody really wanted to live close to the wall, because you had the lights on, dogs barking, soldiers, vehicles, and all. In fact, there was a lot of squats that were set up alongside the western side of the Berlin Wall. But that's the closest you get to it. And I think that is so important. And the political situation in West Germany at that time, that this is not far-fetched, there were a lot of former Nazis in the West German government. I mean, you only have to look at Richard Gehlen, head of the Gehlen organization. He worked top brass in Abwehr, in Hitler's intelligence service, and was brought across, and he was head of the West German intelligence service. There were stories all the time. People were getting outed left, right, and center. Oh, the defense secretary did this, or he was an SS member. So this was very much in the public domain. If you can go back and think of that in '66, and then this movie comes out, as you say, it's of its time. Reminds me also of the Le Carre novel, Small Town in Germany, that's very much about a growing, more overt. These weren't neo-Nazis. This was just the extreme far right as a movement. So there was a lot of fear and paranoia. And I remember even growing up, family members saying, "Oh, Germany's getting a bit too strong again in Europe. Like, we know what happened last time."
Got to keep an eye on them.
How that generation would think. So it's grounded in much realism, this movie.
But talk about realism. I mean, I had an afterthought about the whole film that it's like I've been on a Spybrary meetup. We've had a few sherbets. I've had a big meal. I've come home. I've watched, I don't know, Funeral in Berlin, and I've fallen asleep. And I've had this mad dream. And that's a little bit like Quiller. And the reason why is that in this mad dream, I've had a guy from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, that famous espionage movie, pop up in the swimming pool bath, and then later on, when he escapes from the interrogation, the bloody child catcher gets in the car from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Right?
Lollipops. Remember him? When he got in the car, I was like, no. What I mean? Don't go out with Shane and that and drink too much and eat too much the cheese sandwich and go to bed after watching Funeral in Berlin, because you'll end up dreaming Quiller,
Yeah, especially if it's St. Paddy's night and Andy and I once did 7 or 8 Guinnesses in 2 hours of it was.
Yeah. So it's got that, that sort of strange quality to it with these people popping up from your childhood movies,
I mean, we will get on to the car shortly, because it is a strong lineup. But I wanted to just go back to what you were saying, Andy, about Paul, that introduction to Paul. I mean, that scene. So you've got the opening scene where the spy gets shot in the phone box. Yeah. And then you cut across to, the Olympic Stadium. You're introduced to Paul. Quiller kind of strolls in, and just that whole shot, the pull and the view in of that shot. And
beautiful shot. Yeah.
Yes. And I've been very fortunate to have visited that stadium on a number of occasions. And I mean, it is a stunning stadium, especially back then, because there was no roof on it. So it was no, and they bring in the music. Oh, sorry, the chants. Zeke Heil, and they're really hammering in that this is about the Nazis.
Right.
This isn't about the KGB and Colonel Stock and his crew.
Yeah.
I just love that scene, and Paul's eating his sandwich, isn't he?
Well, it had don't know what you think, Michael, but that opening stanza, what with Quiller grinning and Alec Guinness talking like that, and the sandwich in this weird clunky code exchange about the cigarettes, it was almost bordering on spoof to me at that point. Like, is this serious or what?
Yeah, it feels like that moment in Funeral in Berlin, the opening when the office calls Palmer, and it's Chico, and he's doing the code phrase of the day, and Palmer's not having it. There are a lot of moments in this that feel like that,
Yeah.
I mean, I think at the beginning of this movie, Quiller knows that he is going on essentially a suicide mission. Two men have died, and he can't trust these guys, which is he can't trust Paul, and he can't trust his people. He in the book he makes a big deal about no tags, no one following me, which we do sort of get that with in here. So yeah, I do think there are some funny moments. Again, it's not Ebcris. This is not, that wit and sarcasm that you get, but I think there is some sarcasm, and I think George Segal is sort of an everyman, sort of underdog spy. He's his lack of look. Spoiler, I'm a big fan of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and one of the reasons I like it is because George Lazenby, for as young and cool and physically fit as he is, seems vulnerable in that film, which Sean Connery does not seem vulnerable in most of the Bond films. And I think Segal has some of that same quality here. I'm not really sure why that is. Maybe it's just my
You're right, Michael. I've always thought that, that one scene in On Her Majesty's Secret Service at the ice rink when he knows he's done. He's out, he's exhausted, he's been chased left, right, and center. He goes, I got no way. And then Diana Riggs skates up to him. And I always think Roger Moore couldn't have played that as well as Lazenby. And you're right, neither could Connery. I think that was good casting there. It's interesting, just going back to that other point you made, Andy, about bringing in an American, or maybe it was Michael, because of the production. There was another movie that I introduced Andy to. It's not a spy movie, but it's one of my favorite movies, and it's most definitely a B-side, is The Squeeze. And it's a London crime movie with David Hemming in and the Ulsterman, whose name I forget now, Andy. Stacey Keach plays the lead. Yeah, I can't remember, but Stacey Keach plays the lead, who's an American, and it's meant to be this London cop, and again, that film didn't, most people haven't heard of it, so take from that what you will, but, these companies do make the gamble, don't they?
Yeah, I think they got that wrong, don't want to divert too far on The Squeeze. I think that Hemming should have been the main guy, and Stacey Keach should have been the heavy.
Yeah.
But money probably said, no, we've got to have the American guy as the lead. I thought that film would have worked a lot better with Hemming as the
Agreed.
lead.
Well, I think
David.
I was just going to say, I think that going back to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, you can't really complain about George Lazenby too much when you have Diana Rigg, as your co-lead, and here, George Segal is supported by two men that if there were still phone books, I would pay to watch them read a phone book, Alec Guinness and Max von Sydow.
Yes.
Superb, yeah.
Well, before we move on to those, I just want to read out, just in the interest of balance here. So David Hardman, who's also in our Spybrary community, and if you're listening to this, watching it, and you're not in the community, it's on Facebook, spybrary.com/community, or go to the Need to Know section at spybrary.com, and you can join us there and talk about these movies with us. But he said, I've rewatched the Quiller Memorandum, this is David Hardman, many times. Since I first saw it as a teenager back in the 70s, I really love it. It's true that it's slightly jarring and inexplicable to have an American playing Quiller, but if you can get past the accent, then George Segal is actually very good in the role. He perfectly conveys Quiller's sense of world weariness, as with exchange of coded greetings. No, I don't think I know this brand of cigarettes. Pinter's famous pauses and stilted exchanges add wonderfully to the atmosphere of suspicion. He goes on to say Adam Hall was rather sniffy about the adaptation and particularly the portrayal of Inga. We'll get on to Inga shortly. So here we have someone who actually thought Seagal, apart from the accent, played a good role. And I keep going back to this. So, the directors, Anderson, it wasn't like the whole smiling thing. Was he directed that way? Or was this Seagal picking the choice as an actor? This is the way he read the script and he wanted to play it. Or was he directed? Because he does come across to me as like a smart aleck New Yorker, which again is jarring. He is world weary. And this was, I had more of a problem with this than I did the casting was, like, what's his motivation? Like, all we really know about him is he's been brought back from the Middle East. And I think they even say he's been on holiday in the Middle East, which we obviously know he's been on a mission, but it's not like there's a lot of background to him. And I kept thinking, why is he doing this? Is this just one of these? It's the only thing he knows. That's why he's doing it. Or does he believe in the cause of freedom? Is he a fervent anti-Nazi?
I mean, he's
because if you look at, just to finish this one point, Andrew, if you look at Palmer, he's coerced into what he's doing, right? By Ross and the others. But I kept questioning this. It didn't really come across me why he was putting himself in harm's way.
Well, there's two things, if I may. At one point, Paul says to him, I can't remember the exact wording, but I think Paul says, this is not an order. This is a request that you undertake this mission.
Yes.
But he's a special operator. He's not some kind of Ambler character that stumbled into it. That is his profession. Yeah. So that's in a word why he's doing it. He's been called up and he's been deployed. Yeah. So that's really all I was going to add to that. That is the job. But if we sort of widen the scope here, and this is what I picked up on the second viewing, is the fact that he's the third operative to go in. He's just a field man. He's as disposable as the other two. So there might even be a fourth. There's a circular quality to this because later on in the film, we see him walk down the same avenue that we saw the guy shot at the beginning, which begs the question, did the first agent we see, KLJ, did he literally go through all the same stages as Quiller? Yes. Did he go up through the swimming pool, through the bowling alley, Ali meet Inga, do all that to this same, be interrogated, be let go and shadowed, but then as he's got he didn't have the thugs close to him, so he's got in the phone box, and as they said, they actually sniped him from the ballistics or whatever that they did in the autopsy. So, I hope, stay with me on all this. Yeah. So I don't know what you think to that. That there is that circular quality in the film at that point later on, that it does come back to this KLJ, who is Jones. And I kept missing that. I thought he was just digging around and throwing a name out like Smith. I missed the fact that was the previous agent's name, KLJ, that was killed. So he's kind of blowing himself, isn't he? By going in all these places, say, have you heard of a fella called Jones?
Which is what he says, isn't he? He's like, I want them, because they won't know who he is necessarily. He's turned up in West Berlin.
But that's the thing. But when he's in, this is what I was going to add to that. When he's interrogated, he's drugged and he's interrogated, Max von Sydow says to him, you are Quiller. So that led me to think that Jones was taken, he was drugged, he's had the truth serum, he's spouted out every operative he can think of.
My name's October.
There we go. Here it is.
What's yours?
Quiller.
Huh? And your first name?
No one knows his first name, do they? So it's. I think what you're saying, Andy, is that the movie requires us to think a lot more. That we're not being spoon-fed, are we?
No.
I think Andy's right. I think it is circular. I think Jones went through all those things. I think when Quiller first is on the case, I think he's waving all kinds of red flags to say, oh, look, I'm here. Let's look at me. Come get me. I mean, the dialogue in in the school. When he first goes into the school and he's speaking to Senta Berger, and before that he's speaking to, I'm not sure if she's the headmistress or there's another woman. The dialogue is kind of ridiculous and he seems like sort of an idiot, but I think he's poking to see, because he makes all those jokes about how American boxers are better than German boxers, to see sort of her reaction, to see if she's one of them, Yeah, and I just think, it's Pinter. I mean, I've done a couple of Pinter plays. His dialogue, his characters never say what they're thinking. Never say what they're thinking.
I was going to ask you about that, Michael, because I'm not so familiar with his work. Like, what's he well known for? What's his stock in trade?
Pauses. Seriously. I mean, there is we in the theater say something is Pinteresque, and that means that there's a lot of pauses. And Pinter built pauses into his plays. And you sort of have to adhere to them because they're part of the structure of the play itself. But his dialogue is often very obtuse, very menacing. And like I said, characters don't say what they mean, which, if you think about it, is perfect for a spy film.
Yeah, go on, Andy.
Sorry. Well, I was just going to say, when he's actually introduced to the Inga by the headmistress, and the headmistress is uncannily like she's the dead ringer for Daryl Hannah, isn't she?
I didn't see the tail.
Yeah, but no, I mean like Kill Bill version, which is probably why Tarantino likes this film. But certainly, when he meets Inga there, or is introduced to her, his jaw drops on the floor. All our jaws dropped on the floor, and it's all very awkward. But when he returns to her, it's interesting. Michael says about Pinter's scripts that there's the halting thing, and it's intentional, because it was almost like some stilted kind of exchange of code when he meets her again. It's what's going on here. But as you say, that's what it says on the tin. So,
but it does feel like she's his weak spot. When you first watch it, you're kind of put off by the soft focus that she's shot in for some of it. You kind of go, "Oh, the '60s, right?" But then this last time I watched it, I wonder, is she in soft focus when he's looking at her? Because she's not in soft focus when she's sitting with Max von Sydow at the base and things. And I wonder if that's
so he's seeing her that way because he's in love with her.
Yeah. I mean, the giant
possibly
portrait of the naked woman there who I believe has red hair as well. I think that's his Achilles heel, and I do think, I guess we'll talk about the ending later, I do think Quiller at the ending he feels like he's figured something out. I don't necessarily know that he's figured it out before then, if that makes sense. That's my read.
Yeah.
Well, he's certainly very angry when he's walking into the school, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
And the headmistress is like, he's basically been fed through to he's basically surrounded by neo-Nazis, isn't he? Yes. Including Inga. And who incidentally is Santa Berg is also a Jewish actress. So the two leads there, which is interesting on a film like this. So
it's very, for me, you go back to those scenes with Seagal, and he is solitary. If you think of most spy films, it's normally you've got the hero, but he's got some kind of backup in the field. So if you think of Bond, he's got Felix Leiter, or he's got someone else who's there. Although it might be, a backseat kind of role, they're around. Whereas he has nobody. I mean, Paul and his mates are all in the Europa Center. But he's got nobody in the field watching his back. He is totally on his own.
Well, the agent, the German agent, the big fella at the beginning,
yes,
he explains, doesn't he, which I picked up on the second view because I couldn't understand his accent, that he was protecting Jones, or was there to protect Jones, but Jones shook him off. And, basically he'd still be here if he let me shadow him.
Yeah, true. The other point you pick up on or mention about Seagal being hapless. You know, it is an act, because at one point, you know, he says to, I think, to Inga, I don't speak any German. And then you get that one scene where the Three Stooges are following him. And what I really liked about that, and this may be because I'm a big fan of the German language, there was no subtitles.
Yeah.
It was just that conversation. You could kind of guess he was just having a word. He didn't need to be a German speaker to get it. But I like, oh, he does speak German.
Yeah. And like Michael said, he successfully smoked out the network by confronting the guy. His friends came to help, and he's like, yeah, you, and you.
You know, he's underestimated and dismissed most of the film. Even when he's found the base and he's back there with Alec Guinness is like, will you come upstairs and have lunch? And he's like, no, I'm good. And the other guy, I think actor's name is Peter Karsten, says, would you like to come? And he says, with pleasure. And he kind of gives Seagal a look like, okay, pal, why the attitude? Well, the attitude is because they've sent me on this suicide mission and really given me no help whatsoever. Yep.
Although I get the feeling he wouldn't have liked help. And, you know, he was like, I do this on my own. I do it my way. And I do wonder at what point, you know, we're going to get into spoiler straws now, because we're halfway in. So if you haven't seen this movie before and you don't want this spoiled, go watch it, come back and listen to the second half. But, you know, at what point does he realize that Inga is a neo-Nazi? Because even that one scene, I think it's at her flat. I don't know if you picked up on this, but he's pretending still to be the journalist from the Philadelphia Sports Inquirer, which is an interesting cover. And he's talking about Max Schmeling, the German swimmer, and saying, or the boxer, sorry.
Boxer, yeah.
I'm thinking of swimming because there's a swimming pool named after him in Berlin. But, you know, and he's going, oh, yeah, he lost to someone. It's like, is he needling this Aryan? That, yeah, your boxer lost. And I don't know who the boxer he lost to, whether it was a black boxer or whatever. It's almost like he's... Was it really? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting dialogue. And I don't know if that was in the book or not. I can't recall. But I thought, yeah, is he probing there, or does he know, or is he looking for a reaction?
Well, if he is, he can't get one out of her, because she seems to sort of struggle to even acknowledge that there are these kind of, you know, hidden sympathizers to the Nazi regime, you know. But in terms of age, you hit something on the head earlier, Shane, that Max von Sydow is, what is he, about, would we say he's probably in his 40s in this film? So that would mean, I mean, and in the sort of notes, I think it was Wikipedia or something like that, it actually described him as the aristocratic German, von whatever it would have been, you know? So he would have been a young man, probably a very young SS officer in the war, you know? And there he is, the picture of Aryan supremacy, you know, very tall, very blonde, very blue-eyed, giving it the big one, you know? And poor old, he called him George there, poor old Quiller, as soon as he comes round, the first problem is I haven't got a blindfold on, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's not a good look, is it? Because they haven't blindfolded me. So whatever I do, I better not look at them if I've got half a chance of surviving this, you know? Resistance to interrogation. So, yeah.
Michael, what did you think of von Sydow as October?
Yeah, he's perfect. I mean, he's really good. He's so effortlessly menacing, I think. You know, everything he asks feels menacing, but at the same time, he comes across as this perfect gentleman, you know. I still maintain that Max von Sydow is the best Blofeld of all time, and Never Say Never Again. If that's an opportunity missed as far as I'm concerned, but he's terrific. He's terrific.
Yeah.
He even smokes outside. He even smokes outside. That's how decent a fellow he is, and he doesn't even smoke inside. But it's the psychological effect of the whole interrogation. At no point do you think he's going to start hitting him or hurting him or doing anything like that. But he is He even smiles a different kind of smile, doesn't he? When he's sort of amused, a bit like Christopher Walken does. He's sort of amused by the guy at his mercy, quite funny, I'm still going to kill you though,
I do think this is one element of this film I like better than Ipcris. I think the torture at the end of Ipcris is just feels a little bit dated to me.
Yes.
It feels very 60s. Whereas the way they just pan over and you see that sort of tray of needles and whatever else they're going to give him is much more menacing and feels like something that would be done today, potentially. I also think, when Quiller is, when the guy gets him with the suitcase in the pass by,
Yes.
and he begins to lose consciousness as he's driving and it gets woozy. I think that's also quite terrifying because by the time he stops the car, he can't do anything, and those guys just come up and take him, which I think is, there's no physicality there at all. It's just he's helpless.
That entire scene, you're right, Michael, because we talked at the beginning of this episode that, this is a slow burn. In most spy movies, there would have been some kind of chase, or he'd have done a skidded into a U-turn to get rid of his tail on the Autobahn there. But he didn't. It was just a very, he used, this is very much guile over guns, isn't it? And stunts, even where he loses his tail and then the toxin kicks in. And I think that's the threat as well. You've got the guy in the white coat, the crazy Nazi scientist or whatever, and he's got the paraphernalia of drugs there. And is that more potent than him getting a slap? Because you think, oh gosh, what they're going to give him here.
And when he goes back the second time, it's that chair, that Rococo chair, and Max von Sydow says to him again, there's no threats. It's just like, hello, sit down. And he looks at that chair, doesn't he? He's like, I think I'll stand up, And
it's memorable because he's not in the movie that much, is he?
No.
October. It's only those scenes, really, if you think about it, for the villain.
But coming back to Inga, you said at what point did he think Inga was a neo-Nazi? And I think it was when they were doing the debrief, and he said to the guy, they said we got all of them, and he said, what about the girl? And they said there was no girl there. That's when the penny dropped to Quiller. That's when the penny dropped. Scheißen. That he'd been had. I think he wasn't sure up to that point because they were even using her, weren't they? As like, look, if you're not back before dawn, she's done for.
Yes.
And I guess part of him, if she hadn't have been at work that day at the school, he would have probably thought, my goodness me, they killed her and it's my fault.
Because that whole scene of when they go away, think about it, but if you call anyone, she gets it. They would have no tension to that scene otherwise, because there's no jeopardy. Because you almost have to say he's a world-weary spy, whereas it's just me. What the hell? Whereas there's a very attractive lady involved. So I still question at what point did he have his suspicions? Did he suss before that, or was it? And we'll never know. We can have all the conjecture, but
he denies he knows her, doesn't he? And she kind of betrays she knows him, and he's saying, "Never seen her before in my life, mate." Yeah.
I think there's a hint in a scene earlier after they have slept together. He calls her on the phone from the hotel, and she answers. And I think there's even a clip. Well,
let's play the clip. Let's play the clip here.
I remember there was one point when I've just been left for dead, the character Quiller, and I come back and my room has been ransacked, and I call Inga, I call Senta Berger, and she answers the phone. Well, I remember we talked maybe a half hour, we discussed, was she in bed with somebody? We would never know this, it wasn't in the script, but it certainly made things richer to make that assumption that she was in bed. And Michael then had the light go off just an instant earlier or on, more than she could have done on her own. She'd have to have somebody in bed with her if the light were to go. Well, this is so subtle, and I don't know if anybody ever got this, but it sure made it richer for us. And this was all Michael just building on ideas that we would have on the set. So When I look back on that film, I look back on it with complete pleasure.
I didn't pick up on it. I have to be honest. That I just thought he's calling her in the middle of the night. She's thinking it's a booty call, and she's having a kip. I didn't pick up on that at all.
But the dialogue there is pretty good because he says, "Are you alone?" And she says, "I was asleep," which is very Pinter because she doesn't really answer the question. She just says, "I was asleep." And the way it's framed, it really does feel like you're not seeing the other side of the bed for a reason.
I was expecting the sheets to come back and there was an umpire in bed with her, you know what I mean?
If only. If only. Maybe Jason King would like that movie. I don't know.
Yeah.
I suspect it was October. I think October's in there.
Yeah, the way he was looking at her,
Or
the way he
Paul.
was looking at her when they
Paul.
took Quiller out.
Paul. What, in his classy
probably
dressing
him.
gown?
Yeah,
Eating a muffin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
polishing his glasses like George Smiley with his tie.
Yes.
Yep.
But that's what I'm saying with this movie. It's like it's easy to dismiss it if you're a fan of the books and you're not a fan of Seagal. But we're talking about it now, and there are different layers to this movie that you wouldn't catch on. I certainly didn't get any of this on a first watch. To be fair, there was also something you mentioned, Andy, in a previous conversation about the bowling alley scene.
Yeah.
What was that?
Well, basically, on the second viewing, I picked up on the clues that were in the little thin file. So it had the swimming pool, I think swimming pool ticket, bowling alley ticket, and an address of the school, I think it was. Now, when we go into the bowling alley on the second viewing, I see the heavies, the young neo-Nazis, actually in the bowling alley playing bowls and smoking. Yeah. So when they actually appeared further along in the film, you probably think, oh, they're vaguely generic, familiar as big, strong, tall, young German men, you know? But no, there they are, you know? And I half expected it to be them that actually come out of the swimming pool in the first opening shot. You see the guy swimming up to the bit where the guy from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is there. I expected I expected them to be those heavies, you know? So
That's well spotted, and that's reason 3000 why I would be crap in the intelligence service, because I certainly didn't see them in the bowling alley.
Well, I didn't first time, but on the second viewing, it just
was clever.
Yeah, it's a good catch. It seems like those guys are everywhere. I mean, they're just always around the corner. There are 3 or 4 of them. They look completely nondescript. Got to give a shout out to him. I got his name here. His name is Gunter Meisner, who plays the swimming pool guy, who's also in Kreutzmann in Funeral in Berlin. I love that guy.
Correct. Yeah.
He's in that Funeral in Berlin as well.
Yeah, he's Kreutzmann, the one who's in charge of, who are the people who take people from the east to the west? What's the name of that organization? I forgot.
Yeah, well spotted. And actually, that swimming pool location is pretty fantastic, isn't it? That's on my list of things to visit. It's down in Neukölln, I believe.
It's still there, yeah?
It's still there, yeah. So I'd love to go. And I've visited it with quite a few of the Quiller locations. You know, that's the opening scene, and then later on we walk past that house to the phone booth. You know, it's in the Tiergarten, and it's the Spanish embassy, that building to the right, and it's very much looks the same. No phone box though. No phone box.
I wonder if the Mercedes building, the new Europa Centre, if that was a homage to Quiller in that film that I can't quite think of, that everybody never ever talks about on Spybrary. What is it? Something about a game? Something game? Spy game, is it?
Oh, that one. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe
you know
they
that
took it
shot on
from
the
that.
top of it, where he's, you know, that's probably a
Yeah.
homage to Quiller. I know there's somebody that might give us the answer to that, and I'm sure they will. But
Yeah. We should find out.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Answers on a postcard.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about Paul. I want to play a clip, if I may, which kind of shows the tricky situation that Quiller finds himself in and the way that he's going to be managed by Paul himself.
Let me put it this way. There are 2 opposing armies drawn up on the field, but there's a heavy fog. They can't see each other. Oh, they want to, of course, very much. You are in the gap between them. You can just see us, you can just see them. Your mission is to get near enough to see them to signal their position to us, so giving us the advantage. But if, in signaling their position to us, you inadvertently signal our position to them, it is they who will gain a very considerable advantage. That's where you are, Quiller. In the gap.
He's in the gap.
In
He's
the
in the
gap,
gap.
all right.
And he eats it. I mean, you're so right, Shane, earlier when you said that Quiller doesn't want any help. But like Palmer in those films, you get the sense that Ross doesn't care whether Harry lives or dies. And this film really makes a point of that. You know, Paul is, you know, he eats the little nut or whatever that's supposed to represent Quiller. And then those scenes with George Sanders and the other guy where they're discussing
Yes.
pheasant in the same intonation as they discuss Jones, who's just been killed. And they pop up twice. And the juxtaposition of when those guys come in, they're first right after Jones is killed. And the second time we see them is after October tells his men to kill Quiller. And then we cut to them and they're all dressed up for the Lord Mayor's Midsummer Ball or something. And you know, George Sanders is going. The other guy is like, why didn't he? I didn't get invited, you know. So we're definitely playing with authority and giving the sense that Quiller is completely on his own. And if he fails, who cares, you know?
Exactly.
And for those of you who you know, if you're watching this on YouTube, you saw it, but if you were listening, you didn't. But that clip does show Seagal's a good actor because he's got his head in his hands. He's thoroughly bored and frustrated, and he's like, "What is this?" You know, we've all done that at work, right? Oh, here we go. I think he's a much better actor than people are giving him credit for in this movie.
Yeah, I think we think of him as a comic actor from his work in the 70s, you know, and maybe in the 80s, which, let me just tell you, comedy is hard too, you know, but
Yeah.
I think he's solid. Yeah, I think he's really solid. He's American, yeah, no question. He's not the guy in the books, but he's a solid actor and he works for the script. It's just not, you know, the Quiller in the books. And I will say that I've, like I said, I've read 2 of those books, and the Quiller in the books is not exactly a super likable character either. He's not someone you'd want to have a drink with, like Harry Palmer. You'd like, oh my God, yeah, let's go to the pub with that guy. But
He's an anti-hero, isn't he?
Very much so. And I think they're going for that with George Segal a little bit here as well. It just doesn't play quite the same way.
Yeah, I just wish he wasn't so smug and smart alecky. And there is that, is this just a front because he wants to lull him into that false sense of security? But that doesn't play so well. But the anti-hero, you know, we'll talk about kind of the escape scene at the end when he's, you know, walking around all these wonderful West Berlin locations. And you look at the state on him, you know, they've left him by the river there, you know, he's so disheveled. You know, if that was James Bond, his hair would be in place, you know, maybe he'd straighten his tie and he's back at it. Whereas you look at Quiller and he's in a right 2 and 8.
But he managed to get hold of a fresh suit the next day. He managed to get hold of a fresh suit the next day, didn't he?
No, he dries it out in his room. He's draped over this room and he's drying it out. He just asked for a pair of shoes.
Yes. What do we think of that escape scene?
Yeah, I liked it. I like the intensity of the and you can see it moving through the night. You can see it's getting lighter and lighter and lighter. We're literally moving towards dawn. We're moving towards the deadline. And he makes several attempts. He thinks he's done it. He's probably not quite as clever as he thinks he is. Could have laid low a little longer. Then tentatively had a little peep round the corner at the train station, but he just trotted straight down the stairs and straight into our friends from the bowling alley there, you know?
Yes.
But yeah, that whole thing I thought was very good, as that just grinding that perimeter of guys that aren't too close but aren't too far, you know? And imagine that, you know?
Yeah, and he picks up the phone and they push the you know, those old phones, those rotary ones, the kids won't know what they are, but, you know, and
that's it, yeah. You know, and
so
from what we've seen earlier, when he was taken prisoner, he's not the Quiller of the books, because he certainly can't fight his way out of a paper bag, this fella, can he?
Yeah,
So
he's-
Took a few of them out. He did better than I would in a bar brawl. Let's be honest. He took one or two of them out, but the guy behind the door sorted him out.
he walked straight into that one, didn't he?
Look at Bruce Lee over here, right, Michael? I mean, I'd be well happy if I took 2 henchmen out. That'd be a good result for me. And if I'd get battered by the third,
Yeah, nobody's
You
going to
compare
recommend
that
Quiller for
scene,
the
though.
fights.
You compare that scene.
Sorry, Michael?
but-
No, I said nobody's going to recommend this movie for the fights.
Come on, Michael. No,
No,
Well,
absolutely.
I was going to say, if you compare it to Condor, which has probably got one of the most realistic, well choreographed fight scenes in any spy movie, probably, on a par of the train fighting in From Russia with Love, to that, there's
Yeah.
just no, they could have done better, must do better,
Yes, absolutely. But
Mm.
the thing I like about that whole sequence though is he gets to the hotel and Wednesday's Child is playing on the radio, which I thought
Yeah.
was a nice touch. What did you touched on it earlier on, I think, Andrew? But what do you think of that theme music? I mean, you said it's no Ipcress, right? It's different. But what was your read of the theme music? Wednesday's Child, sung by Mac Monroe.
But that's sort of like, again, it's on the beginning credits, but you just, is the actual motif of it throughout the film?
They don't hammer it. No, they
I was
really
going to
don't.
say, because it's like From Russia with Love, he only sings it on the end credits, doesn't he? On the beginning credits, it's an
Right.
instrumental with the belly dancer,
Yeah.
What can I say? I mean, I liked it. I liked the music had that sort of spy aesthetic, the cymballing, twangy guitar, harpsichord. I liked it. It's just that poor old John Barry, he can't do anything that is superior maybe to what he's done in Ipcress. And he knows he's got a Bond movie coming up round the corner, which is much bigger. So he's kind of scraped the barrel a little bit with what he's put in here for Quiller. It's okay, it's good, but it's just not top draw.
What do you
as
think,
his
Michael?
Bond work,
Yeah, I like it. I think it's in places less John Barry than even Ipcress, if that makes sense. The John Barry cues, especially the action cues, are so very John Barry, which is, I love it in Bond, especially, and I love the title theme for Ipcress File. But I think this works. It sets a nice sort of melancholy mood and doesn't draw attention to itself as much as it could.
I agree with you. I think melancholy is the right word, and it sets the tone for the movie. And I think that adds a sadness and a bleakness to this movie that kind of fits Quiller being the solitary person on his own. So I liked it, though. I did wonder if it was a little bit of a rip-off of Third Man, or was it in homage to Third Man? I mean, they used the zither in that. Can't quite recall what instrument they used on this. It sounds fairly.
I think.
Is
it's
it?
either there's bits of cymbal. This is where Mr. Bradford will
Yeah.
help us, but I think there's a cymbal in here and there, and there's definitely a harpsichord. Yeah.
And it's very different from Funeral in Berlin as well. The theme is there.
But Funeral in Berlin, for me, suffers greatly for an absence of John Barry.
Mm.
I've made my case on that one. Yeah.
That final sequence, when he's making his escape, and we do see Quiller use his guile with the car bomb and that whole escape. How did that sequence work for you, Michael?
I like that scene. It's quite tense. It's quite I want to use the word Hitchcockian, but I don't know. It's just about, is that bomb going to slide off the hood of the car? So yeah, I like it. That's probably the most tense scene in the entire film, and it's kind of literally the big bang that ends it. But I think the scene that follows it is, to me, more interesting.
Yeah, I think what I got was, what I liked about it was, he rigs it up, whatever, and he kind of hiding around the back, and he's waiting for the explosion that doesn't come, and you're like, oh God, I've messed up here. It's like me when I do this podcast, right, with the text. I was like, oh, here we go, I'm live, and I've set it up wrong, and boom, we come to life.
But what got me was when he's primed it all, very clever. He's he knows it's going to slide down the bonnet as he started the car, but then he can't get out of the frigging garage, can he?
Yeah.
He's like, crime's over the top. He can't get out.
Yeah.
And the bomb's sliding down the thing. And you think, what does he need to get out? Then when he finally does get out, my goodness me, the whole garages are flattened, aren't they? And that would have been him as well, you know?
There's even a little moment once he gets
Yeah,
out where nothing happens, and we're kind of wondering, did that work or not?
Yeah, that's what Shane. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it a dud?
Yeah. Have I wired this wrong, you know? And how am I going to get out of this now? And then he gives them the slip, which
Off
is
it goes.
and they're like, yeah, we got him. They're all chuffed, don't they? Go, yeah, we got him.
Yeah.
The car bomb got him. Just interesting. I'm skipping back a few scenes, but I did read, there's a great book. It's called Girls, Guns and Gadgets, or Gadgets, Girls and Guns, which is all about 60s spy cinema. And they were saying in there that the bowling alley, they only filmed it there because originally they were due to film in the same bar that they were using for Funeral in Berlin. I think one of the drag bars or whatever, and so then they had to switch it, so we wouldn't have had that. And I thought the bowling alley kind of, that sequence worked really, and I wonder they had to rewrite the dialogue for that, because he talks about, I'm interested in bowling alleys. It was just odd for an American to say that in Germany. But that's something I picked up from that book, which I recommend. But let's crack on. Oh, go on, Andy.
I was just going to say, is the book, is it in line with the plot of the book? All these things that happen?
I can't remember. It was a long time ago I read the book.
Yeah, I think Inga is very different in the book.
Yes.
Quiller is very different as well. I don't know if anybody's mentioned that. I know that the people who really know the series say that the Quiller Memorandum is quite different than the other books. The other ones are just so suspenseful, and the two I've read. But yeah, I think it is a bit different. It does have some of the same scenes, but yeah, it's, a film is not a book. It's just
correct.
Yeah, a film, you've got to open it up. You've got to invite more people in to the story.
Well, I remember reading Spy Who Loved Me at 12 years old and thinking, like, well, this isn't what I remember from TV. So, I mean, that's a case in point. But on that note, one of our supporters and listeners, Murali Murthy, who's a huge fan, he used to be very active. There used to be a Quiller Yahoo group, if you remember those, going way back to probably the MySpace days. He says, my evolved view of the film, Harold Pinter was awarded a contract to develop a screenplay for a film which would work within a certain budget and a certain filming time frame. The book is a bit on the sprawling side, so Pinter had little choice but to cut out the entire backstory in order to bring out the essence of the Quiller character. I think Pinter did a reasonably good job in his trademark style. The casting of Seagal was a mistake that compounded the needless conversion of Quiller to an American, but the film came in at a reasonable profit. All said and done, the movie is a satisfying watch, even as the fanatics foam at the mouth. So it's a sprawling book, apparently. And I must read out head of Berlin station, Opa Prince of Spybrary, says, I then love his soft speaking, his dialogue with Paul, and his milder than some other brands. And of course, the old Berlin locations, some renamed, some gone, and a lot of that stuff shot within a square kilometer around Schlesischer Tor, then the end of the Western world, which is what I was saying. It was right by the wall, which of course, as you were saying earlier on, Andy, we don't see the wall. The Cold War is not really referenced. East Germany isn't referenced, etc. Yeah. So interesting comments. I think we should get towards the conclusion. Before we do that, I just want to play this clip from Quiller as he confronts Inga.
We got all of them.
Oh, really? Good.
Well, not all of them, perhaps. Most of them.
So, Michael, talk us through the ending from your perspective. How was it for you?
It's a gut punch. And the first time you watch it, you go, wait a minute. Wait a minute, is she a Nazi? By the time you watch it two more times, you're like, oh my God, this is just, the new generation of Hitler Youth they're indoctrinating probably, and the whole school feels like it's like that. This is where the guy, that one teacher who had to leave, but you get the sense at the end it's just very subtle, but they're training a new generation. And so I wouldn't say this is a happy ending. I mean, it's be aware, be on guard. They're still out there,
Yes.
which to me, again, makes it feel a bit more modern than if it was just strictly Cold War.
How about you, Andy?
Well, it comes back to these questions that were subtle, but they were like, it was a nagging doubt. I mean, I know it's just a film, but Inga, how is, look, she's got a lovely flat, she's got a job, I think, are we allowed to say she's drop dead gorgeous,
Yes, we're not getting cancelled for that.
And
You get cancelled if you say she's ugly.
And I think that Quiller said something. I can't remember if he was as British as to say we got a boyfriend, but he said something like that. And she was like, "Oh, I just do my work." And now, as we kind of know, it was probably October is a fella, which is only natural in the order of things, because it's just absolutely insane that she wouldn't have anybody, but with various disclaimers underneath, like anybody, anything, but for him to sort of be faced with that, and this from their first conversation about the old Berlin or the old Germany and the new Germany, and what are you teaching the kids about the new Germany? And I think she says something about how to interact with the new Europe or something like that. And you say it's like this nothing has ended, it's just changed. And as Michael said at the beginning of this, sadly, we can sort of see such things playing out on the world stage today, of a certain point of view, let's say, a certain need to dominate and superiority and so on and so forth. So he's faced with that, but the first time you see it, you don't know what he's going to do. You don't know if he's just going to pull a gun out and shoot her. That would be a shock, wouldn't it? You don't know what he's going to do, and then he just turns on his heel and leaves, doesn't he?
You're right.
His report
And
into Paul.
that line, we got them all, nearly all of them. It's like, there are more out there. That's the warning of the movies. That we got this little lot, but we know there's a firm down in Munich that are just as bad or whatever. That this is just a small part of the network, and
he's talking
that
to her
look
with
from
his eyes when he says that. He's talking to her with his eyes. He's like almost pleading, like, are you or aren't you?
Yeah. And it's interesting you mention eyes, because for me, that end scene, he walks off through the playground and you see the headmistress and you realize then she's in on it. There's a little look. And as Inga gets the kids together, marshalling them together, she has that look. And it's the first time you see this, like incredibly beautiful woman who has this almost hateful look in her eyes as she's looking at the back of him going, this is the enemy. This is the enemy of our movement. Really, again, good acting to be able to play that with your eyes, I think.
And the shock of her eyes, because she's obviously been told by the cell that he's been blown to smithereens.
Yes.
And he walks in the
Good
place
point.
and she thinks she's seen a ghost.
Like a ghost.
Which says it all, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, very powerful ending there. And then we go, obviously the scene with Paul is interesting. We were talking about subtext, and I actually heard this from another source. And I'm not sure if this is intended or not. And Michael, with your professional experience, I'd be really interested to hear your view on this. But when they're at the top of the Europa Center and they're looking out over West Berlin and the camera pulls in, and we talked earlier on about how modern that part of Berlin is and vibrant. And, Quiller's got his right arm, I think, up on the window, on the pane, looking out. It's almost like a Nazi salute, looking out over West Berlin. And I heard that source, and when I watched it, I thought, crikey, that may be a fair, that may be a bit of a reach, but it's interesting that they shot him in that pose right at the end of the movie. I don't know if you picked up on that at all.
I remember the scene. I'm not sure why we would, choose to have Quiller sort of doing the salute. But
well, not inferring that he is a fascist, but like that's the specter of Nazism over Berlin. It's or neo-Nazism. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting scene. Why? Because obviously that's directed. He didn't just stick his hand on that window for no reason, right? And is it just because he's so tired and it's propping him up? I don't know. But and then again, I heard that on Tarantino's podcast, and they brought up, they were talking about it as well. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe there is something in that,
I don't know.
or it's just us nerds seeing things that aren't there.
No, I don't.
Would Pinter have
I think it's very
written that
possible.
into the
I think
screenplay?
everybody. I think in films and television shows, everything is a choice. Somebody thought about this a lot, potentially, hopefully, before they did it. So it's very possible. I do think this movie shows us that they're everywhere. They're everywhere. They look like us. And I think that's one of the themes of this film.
Agreed. So I think Rotten Tomatoes, it didn't get a very good score. I did write it down, but I haven't got it here. But it had quite a low score on IMDb. But in terms of trench coats, so 5 is the top rating, 1 is bottom. Michael, in terms of trench coats, how many would you give the Quiller Memorandum?
Well, look, let me just say, to give it 5 would have to be a very, very, very special film. I think giving 4 trench coats to the Quiller Memorandum is appropriate. I feel like I've been sort of the George Segal apologist in this podcast, but I think it's a strong film, and I think people need to give it a second look. So I'll go 4.
Andrew?
I'm not allowed half, am I? I'm not allowed half a trench coat.
I don't know.
Well, I'm loath to give it 4, and I'm loath to give it 3. 2's enemy action, isn't it? As we already know. I'll give it 3. Yeah. But it is one of those films. It's not quite up there with Godfather and Star Wars and Enter the Dragon and all these things that I've lost count of the amount of times I've seen them. But I will revisit this one over and again because I think it does throw up little gems. And, Tarantino's not that far wrong with it, really. But I'm going to give it a 3 because it's not something that sat me on my posterior the first time I saw it, but it does have its qualities. Yeah, I'll give it 3. What about you?
Okay, so I actually would give it a 4. And as I said at the top of the podcast, I am seduced by the fact that this is Berlin of the 60s. And, I have a spare room here with a ton of memorabilia from East Berlin and East Germany. And I love the coffee table books of that era where you see the actual pictures of the city and life in the city and the fashions and the designs and the symbolism. So, I'm in on that. But the other reason I give it a 4, because I'm with you. If I wasn't doing the Spybrary thing, I probably would have watched it once and it was all right. I wouldn't rush to watch it again. But watching it for this, I actually watched it twice as well in preparation for the podcast. And each time I kept seeing new stuff that I hadn't picked up on before. And I didn't even, on 3 viewings of this, didn't even pick up on the guy, the henchman in the bowling alley. And I'm sure there's other things I've missed as well. So for that, I would say, well, I would watch this again to see what else I may have missed. But also, I just think that message is poignant. I think the melancholy, the fact it's anti-Bond, he's disheveled. He does not get the girl at the end, which is what most, spy movies, they get the girl. It's a happy ending. It's a successful mission. And whilst he's been successful in his mission or his assignment, the actual mission of rolling up the whole of the neo-Nazi network, that has not been completed.
He can't complete it. It's whack-a-mole, isn't it?
Yeah, so for me, it's 4. Now, I wouldn't recommend this to someone who's new to spy movies or, give me a good 60s spy movie to watch. And I wouldn't recommend it to those of our listeners and viewers who like the more action end of things. But if you like something that's a bit more realistic, gritty, I say give Quiller Memorandum a go. I can kind of see why friend Tarantino enjoys it so much.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, if your view of 60s spy films are their, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 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 60 Ton of sexism, it's a Bond-like spy. This might be a breath of fresh air, potentially,
Yeah.
So for the reasons you just said, and because I think it's intelligent. But yeah, I mean, the other films we've talked about on Section F, Third Man, From Russia with Love, Funeral in Berlin, this movie is not in that league. It's
Yes.
not. It's second tier. It's. I'm not going to say B-side, Andy, but I mean, that was a good comparison. But it's certainly not in the league of The Third Man or From Russia with Love in terms of what it's setting out to do. But it's a strong film.
Marvelous. Well, that wraps up this installment of Section F. Andy and Michael, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your views. I really enjoyed this, and I have to thank you, Michael, for suggesting Quiller Memorandum for this episode of Section F, because I probably wouldn't have watched it again, and I ended up watching it twice, and it's given me a lot to think about and a lot to appreciate, more so than the group think, shall we say, in the Spybrary community. And we might get some stick for this, and bring it on. I look forward to everyone's comments in the group, because that's what books and movies and music and TV, it's all about differences of opinion. And like I say, come join us in the community. If you are absolutely raging on listening to this, or you're like, I agree with these guys, but also I like it for these other reasons, then do come join us at spybrary.com/community. Michael, Andy, thank you ever so much for coming on to Section F.
Pleasure. Thank you, Shane.
Thank you very much.